Activate Math Questions Week 3. So you're asked which of the following graphs corresponds to the inequality, the absolute value of x plus 3 is greater than or equal to 2. So when you talk about absolute value, you're really talking about the distance away from something. So you're wondering, when is that distance greater than or equal to 2? So when you're talking about an absolute value inequality like that, you have to set up a compound inequality. And the first inequality is just x plus 3 is greater than equal to 2, or, and then to set up the other one, x plus 3 is less than or equal to negative 2. So you flip the inequality sign and you also change the sign on the number. And then when you solve each inequality for x, you'll subtract 3 from both sides. So the first inequality says x is greater than or equal to negative 1. Or, and then you're going to subtract 3 from both sides of the second inequality. So you'll have x is less than or equal to negative 5. So x is less than or equal to negative 5, or x is greater than or equal to negative 1. And then you simply look at the number lines. All of the number lines have closed circles, which is indicative of the less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. So if you're looking at the negative 5 piece first, x is less than negative 5. That's illustrated there. And really that's the only place that is illustrated because the x values will be going to the left of negative 5. And then x is greater than or equal to negative 1, so there's your negative 1. And the x values would be going to the right of negative 1. So then F is your answer for question 1. When you look at question 2, it's asking what is the solution set for that equation. In other words, solve that equation. So you can begin by distributing. So we'll have 5x minus 15, and then bring down the plus 4, is equal to, now the 5 comes down, and I would distribute a negative 2, and I would call that minus 2x, and then negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. So again, when you use the distributive property, you're simply multiplying whatever is inside the sets of parentheses. And then we can combine like terms. So on the left-hand side, we've got the 5x. But when we combine negative 15 and positive 4, we get negative 11 or minus 11. The equal sign comes down. On the other side, we only have the negative 2x. But you can combine the 5 together with the minus 2, or you can call it negative 2, and call that positive 3. And then you have to get your variables together on the same side of the equation. Usually I move this one with a smaller coefficient, so that would mean adding 2x to both sides. So 7x minus 11 equals 3. Then you would simply add 11. So the 11's cancel. 7x equals 14. And then divide by 7 on both sides. So your final solution is x equals 2. And these braces are just another way of showing a solution set. And we see 2 right here with H. On the third problem, it asks you what symmetry is shown in the accompanying graph. So if you look at the graph, at either one, I'll just start by looking at the graph up top. What do you do to it, or how do you reflect it to get the other image down below? Well, this one is not too hard to see that if you reflect that graph about the x-axis, that's the picture you would create. So flipping or reflecting that graph about the x-axis would cause that picture. So then we say, well, what symmetry is shown? Well, that graph has then symmetry with respect to the x-axis. If you would fold that graph across the x-axis, the two parts would lie on top of themselves. So again, you think about folding the graph across the x-axis to determine what type of symmetry is shown. On number 4, you're solving a system of equations. Now, to solve a system of equations, you can solve both for y and graph. You can isolate a variable and use substitution, or you can use linear combinations or the addition method. And since both of those equations are in what we call standard form, using elimination or the addition method is probably the fastest. So if you start by thinking about adding the equations together, nothing will be eliminated as is. But I see that my y's have a positive 2 and a negative 1. And I know that if I multiply the entire top equation by 2, then my y's will have opposite coefficients, and I can cancel from there. So if I multiply the entire top equation by 2, we'll have 6x minus 2y equals 2, and then I'm going to leave the bottom equation as is, because then when we add the two equations together, we've got 10x, the y's are eliminated, and then we have equals negative 10 when we add 2 and negative 12 together. So then we divide by 10 on both sides, and x is equal to negative 1. Now, at this point, if you wanted to, you could see, well, the only answer choice that has a negative 1 is J. But just to make sure, because that might not always be the case, then you can take that 1 and substitute it into either of your original equations to solve for y. So if we do that, we could have 3x minus negative 1 equals 1. So that would be 3x, I'm sorry, I plugged in for the wrong variable. Let me start that again. X is negative 1. So 3 times negative 1 minus y equals 1. So negative 3 minus y equals 1. We can add 3 to both sides so that negative y equals 4. And if you think about dividing both sides of the equation by negative 1 in order to get y completely by itself, y will be negative 4, which again agrees with the y coordinate and answer choice J. And then the last one says, in a carton of 48 light bulbs, the ratio of broken bulbs to unbroken bulbs is 3 to 5. How many bulbs were broken? So when you think about things being in a ratio of 3 to 5, that being 3 broken bulbs to every 5 broken bulbs or unbroken bulbs, think of that together kind of as a package of 8. You've got 3x plus 5x, and that has to be equal to 48. So when I say a package of 8, I've got 8x equals 48. And the reason that we're doing this is that we don't know exactly how many bulbs at this point are broken or unbroken, but since the ratio is 3 to 5, you're going to have them in multiples of 3 or multiples of 5. And together, again, we've got kind of like units or groupings of 8. So if we divide by 8, that means x will equal 6. So if the broken bulbs compared to the unbroken bulbs is 3 to 5, you can think of that as being 3x compared to 5x, or that would be 18 compared to 30. And you're asked how many bulbs were broken, so here are your broken bulbs. That would be 18. So J, 18 is the correct answer.